Hello. So in the past I've showed a couple of games that I've designed in the past that were not very good, and thought I'd continue with the next one, which I tried to design, which was the Battle of Cape St. Vincent, 1797. I designed this back in 2010, played it one time with my son, and we both thought it was not very good, so it's never been played again. But anyway, just for fun, I thought I would go over it. You can see my map. It's kind of faded. It's kind of hard to see the hexes on it. Over the camera, it seems easier to see the hexes, but just looking at it top down, it's kind of difficult. But anyway, I'll kind of go over it and then tell you all the things that I think are not good about it. But you can kind of see the components. Again, this was another game I did on Game Crafter. That's where the game components came from. I'm sure they have better ones now, but back in 2010, my selection was not as good. Anyway, let's go over how to set up and play. Alright, first thing you do is place your 4 map boards on the table next to each other, with this side that says wind direction northeast, and the compass rose or whatever up there goes in the top left, and then the other pieces are the same, so it doesn't matter where you put those. And then the British player, it's the Battle of Cape St. Vincent, was the British against the Spanish. The British were outnumbered, but they did have then Commodore Nelson, and he managed to turn it into a victory, even though they were quite outnumbered. So anyway, the British forces can place their ships anywhere up in this top right quadrant, and it's got just a generic ship picture on one side and then the name of the ship on the other. So this is the Prince George, and this is the Namur. Anyway, the British player will place all his ships up here however he wants to do that. So let me do that. One problem you can see right off the bat is that the hexes are smaller than the tokens, so that's kind of a big problem right away. And when placing his ships up in the top right quadrant, the British player gets to put the Commodore Nelson figure underneath one of his ships. I'm choosing the HMS Victory, and that gives whichever ship has the Commodore Nelson token underneath of it gets a bonus to combat rolls and movement. Then the Spanish player, and again they have the ship icon on one side and the names of their ships on the other. This is the San Francisco de Paula. Anyway, the Spanish player can place his ships anywhere in these bottom 2 quadrants of the map, so I'll do that. So for example, there we go, we've got the Spanish ship set up here and the British ship set up here. Now facing does matter, because when we talk about movement here in a little bit, each ship gets 2 movement points, and turning your ship, you have to sail in the direction you're facing, and turning your ship is 1 movement point. Alright, next in the setup, the Spanish player will take the 2 Spanish ship boards, and the British player will take the 1 British ship board. And you'll just place your supply of orange, white, and red winks, I think they're called, and your dice somewhere where all players can reach them. That's it, and you're pretty much set up and ready to play. So the Spanish get to take the turn first, followed by the British, and on your turn you can move all of your ships and then attack with any that are in range, and in range is actually adjacent to an enemy ship. And again, as I talked about movement, you get each ship gets 2 movement, except for the ship with Nelson gets 3 movement. Each ship gets 2 movement, and again, you got to sail in the direction you're going. You're headed, and turning is 1 movement point. So in this case, if the ship wanted to turn this way, that would be 1, 2, and that would be his movement. There is one exception. The wind during the Battle of Cape St. Vincent, the wind was from the northeast, so blowing this way. So any ships turning into the wind or turning into the northeast or sailing into the northeast only get 1 movement point. So for instance, this ship here, it would only move 1 because it's going into the wind. Or if a ship was sailing south and turned this way, it wouldn't, that would take its full movement action, because it wouldn't have another point to move that direction. So as I said, all the Spanish ships would get to take their turn, movement, attack if they get adjacent to a British ship. Then the British ship gets to take a turn where they get to move all of their ships and attack with their ships if they get adjacent to a ship. So let's talk about how combat works. Alright, so let's say we had 2 ships adjacent to each other. Now you can always ask the opponent to show you what the name of the ship is, what the name of a ship is at any time. So you know, your opponent would have to show you this is the Neptuna, and this is the Egmont, I'm not sure how you pronounce, but anyway, once they're adjacent to each other, then you have to, at that time, both say what the names of the ships are, and then whoever's turn it is, for instance, if this was the English's turn, then they could fire on this enemy ship. So when you're going to attack, you find your ship on your shipboard. This one, in this instance, we have the Egmont or Egmont, and you look at the number of cannons. The leftmost space is what's available. So, and he has 3 cannons, and so he gets to roll 3 attack dice. I'm going to use my little homemade ship dice tray that my daughter made me years ago. You may have seen that in one of my previous videos. But anyway, so he would roll 3 attack dice in total. Now, we're using D10s, and in this game, a 0 is not a 10. It's actually a 0. So it's 0 through 9 is the way I've designed it in this game. But so in this total, we would have 20. So then the opponent would look at the ship that you're firing on, so that we were firing on the Neptuna. So if he's undamaged, it takes 17 or more to hit him. So in this case, the Egmont rolled a 20. It only takes 17 to hit the Neptuna. So he would have to put a damage token now on, because he was damaged at 17, so you now put a damage marker on the 14 to show that that's the next. So the next time he's hit, it will take 14 plus to hit him. Then you would move the damage marker again. Then the next time he's going to get hit, it only takes 10 points to hit him, and if he gets hit again, then he's sunk. And if your opponent successfully hits you and you have to put a damage marker or move the damage marker down, then you have to determine if any of that damage was done to your guns. So in this case, your opponent, if you're hit, your opponent gets to roll 1d10. In this case, we got a 6. You'd compare that to your cannons. At this point, it takes a 7 plus. So he only got a 6, so his cannons would not be damaged. If we had rolled a 7 or more, then we'd put a white token covering up his 3 cannons, and then when the Neptuna fires or attacks next time, he would only get to roll 2 dice instead of 3, because one of his cannons were damaged. So, you know, then the next time they're hit, he would only have one, and then if you have a marker on, if your marker gets moved all the way down there, then you have no more, you can't fire anymore. Now every time your ship is fired on but not hit, so for instance if the Egmont had fired on a Neptuna and rolled less than 17, like maybe he got 12, then instead of getting a damage marker placed here, you'd see this says number of times fired on. You put an orange marker there, and then that lowers the to hit value of whatever the current to hit value is by 1. So the next time the Neptuna is attacked, it would only take 16 points to hit him instead of 17. Now if you actually do hit, then you don't put a times fired on marker, then you put your damage marker on or move it down if there's already one on there. If you happen to be in a raking position, in other words you're firing your broadside, you're in this position where you can fire your broadside straight down the ship either from the front or behind, then you get to roll 1 extra die in your attack. But otherwise, if you're just next to each other like this or like this, then you don't get the extra raking die. One other thing we didn't mention when I was talking about movement, you always have to, on your turn, when you're moving your ships, each of your ships has to use at least 1 movement point, either to turn or to move. Now, if you are adjacent to a ship doing battle, and it's your turn and you have to move, you always have to do all your movement before you can attack. So it would be inconvenient to have to move and maybe get out of position to fire on this ship. So you can attempt to grapple the ship and not have to use your movement point. And to do that, you just roll 1d10, and if you roll a 5 or better, then you're grappled and you don't have to move that turn, and then you can just do your attack. So that's pretty much how you play. You move around, attacking other ships as they take damage and eventually get sunk. Then they're removed from the board, or they may lose their guns and can't fire. Anyway, once one side has no more ships or no more ships that can fire, then they lose. So basically what we found when my son and I played it is, because the Spanish outnumber the British by so much, that the Spanish, pretty much wiped them out. Now, even though that's the way it was in the real battle, I think the British, better trained British sailors were able to overcome those odds. And I tried to design that into the game by giving the to hit points a little more on the British ships. So like on their bigger ships, like the Victory, you got 20 before you're hit the first time, then 17, then 12. And on the bigger ships for the Spanish, I put 20, then 15, then 10. And on the smaller ships, they were about the same, though, 17, 14, 10, and 17, 14, 10. So I think I probably should have changed it up a little bit on the smaller ships and made the British smaller ships harder to hit than the Spanish smaller ships. But I didn't. So it really turned out to be quite a rout. The Spanish routed the British. It wasn't even really close. So probably needed some design changes there. But that, along with the ships not fitting onto the map, and then these tokens are too big. So when you start getting multiple ships with these tokens on them, and they just kind of overlapped, and it just didn't work out design wise. But I'll go through a couple of example turns and then we'll wrap it up. It's also hard to keep track of what ships you moved and which you didn't, so I found the best thing is just to go from right to left. So anyway, we'll say it's the Spanish turn. They get to go first. So he's going to move 1, 2. He's going to move 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Well, that would be 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Let me finish moving this and I'll come back. Alright, the Spanish finished moving. Even though this guy's adjacent to this guy, because he doesn't have his broadside facing him, he can't fire. Same thing here, so there's no attack can be done. But now when it's the British turns next, we'll get into a little combat. So we'll start with the British over here. This guy's going to move 1, 2. This guy, he's just going to move 1, and he's going to turn this way, and he's going to attack. So let's see who we got here. The Conquistadora against the Captain. Alright, the Captain is here. He gets 3 guns. You can see the 3 gun icon, so he gets to roll 3 dice. And he got a total of 11, 12, 13, 14. Well, here's the Conquistadora. It would take 17 to hit him, so he missed, but since he missed, he does put 1 fired on token on the Conquistadora. So that kind of means it took a little damage, just so it's easier to hit next time. So next time this ship's fired on, instead of taking 17 to hit, it'll only take 16 to hit. Alright, I moved these, then I moved this one adjacent to this ship, so let's see who we got here. Oh, there's the Edgemont again. That's the one I had already moved earlier against the Infante Pelayo. So Edgemont's going to fire on the Infante Pelayo. So again, the Edgemont has 3 cannons, so he gets to roll 3 dice. We got 9, 14, 15. Here's the Infante Pelayo. It would take 17 to hit him, so he doesn't hit, but he does put a fired on token on him. So I moved all the other ships, and the only next combat we have is the Prince George against the Conde de Regula. So the Prince George is a larger ship, so he's got 4 cannons. 1, 2, 3, 4. So he gets to roll 4 dice. And we got 9, 10, 17, and 0. So 17 against the Conde de Regula, which is here, and it's actually a larger ship. It takes 20 to hit it. So again, that's a miss. So we just put a fired on marker there. So of course next time he's fired on, it'll only take 19 to hit him. Alright, so that's all the British ship movement. So let's do the Spanish. Looks like we'll have a fight. So remember, you got to move at least 1 unless you try to grapple. He's going to turn, and now actually he'll be raking this ship. And that is the San Domingo versus the Blenheim. And remember, because he's raking, he actually gets to roll an extra die. San Domingo is here, so he just has 3 cannons. We got 6, 7, 14. The Blenheim's a larger ship. It would take 20 to hit him, so he just gets a fired on token. I'm hoping I eventually get a hit here so we can see how that looks. But you can see how as the battle goes on and the ships take these fired on tokens, the attrition that their ships take, they start getting easier to hit. Maybe some of the crew is injured and they can't maneuver as well, and some of the sails are damaged, that kind of thing. Alright, the Conquistadora is going to turn and fire on the Captain right here. And remember, the Conquistadora gets 3 cannons. So he got a 9, 16, 17 against the Captain, so that's actually a hit. So we put a red token. Now you don't put it on the first one, because that's what it took to hit. Then you mark where it's going to take to hit now. So he's now here where it will take 14 to hit him, and the next time 10 he's hit, and then finally if he gets hit again he'll be sunk. But it's there on the 14th. Now because he took a hit, you don't put a fired on token. That's only when it's a miss. But because you hit him, you do roll against his cannons. So remember, you roll 1d10 and you're trying to get a 7 plus. And that's nothing. Let's roll again. 3. So he doesn't lose any cannons. If you had rolled more than 7, then you'd put a marker on here, and he would down where he would only get to roll 2 dice when he's firing instead of 3 because he has less cannons. Anyway, that's probably a good enough example. You can see how the game works. I don't think it was terrible. I don't think it's as terrible a design as my other previous 2 games that I showed, but I do think, you know, it needed a redesign to make the components fit better and maybe make the Spanish ships you know, a little easier to hit, probably, something like that. Anyway, I just kind of want to show for fun. Like I said, I've got this one I designed in 2010. I think I actually designed another game, or, you know, I say design a game. It's not like I tried to sell these anywhere but Game Crafter. I had one before that, after Yoho and a Bottle of Rum, but before this one, called Tracking Bigfoot. But the only copy of that I had, I gave to my son, and I doubt he even still has it. But if he does, I'll try to have him bring it one day, and I'll show that one to y'all too. But anyway, that's it for now. Thanks for watching.